Hello girls, I hope you're staying safe at home. To continue with the digestive system, today we are going to talk about swallowing and peristalsis and other topics related to the digestive system or related to digestion. So remember children, when you swallow food, there are several simultaneous actions. Simultaneous means taking place at the same time. First, what happens? The tongue presses upward and back against the roof of the mouth. The roof of the mouth is also known as palate, and this forces the bolus. You know, the bolus is formed by the chewed food sticking together with the help of saliva, and this bolus is forced into the throat, which is also known as the pharynx. So here you learned two new words. One is the roof of the mouth, is also known as the palate, and the pharynx, which is the throat. When the bolus is forced into the throat, the back part of the roof of the mouth cavity, which is also known as the soft palate or the false palate, as you can see in this diagram, okay, the false palate, it rises up and closes the opening between the throat and the nasal cavity. So food will not go in the upward direction towards the nasal cavity. And then at the entrance of the windpipe, you will see the larynx, also known as the voice box. Okay, it is pushed in the upward direction, and when it is pushed in the upward direction, this portion also comes up, and this flap epiglottis, it will close the passage towards the trachea or the windpipe, which leads to the lungs. And now the only way for the food to pass down is into the esophagus, which leads towards the stomach. Now next, moving on to the esophagus. Now esophagus is a tube which simply conducts the food from the throat to the stomach. So esophagus is a tube which takes food from the throat to the stomach. It passes through the diaphragm, very close to the backbone, and it does not produce any digestive enzyme because it is only a passage for the food. Now once the food reaches the esophagus, it is conducted behind by a special movement called peristalsis. So the special movement by which food passes down the esophagus is known as peristalsis. To define peristalsis, it is a wave of constrictions caused by the circular muscles of the gut pushing the food along. So what happens is, there, this is the food, okay, so this part will relax, okay, and again when this food moves down, this part will relax, and again this will come back to its normal. So there you can see, this is the wave of constriction. It constricts, again constricts as it passes down. So this movement is known as peristalsis. So as the wave passes, the circular muscles relax. Remember children, it is caused by the circular muscles of the gut. The circular muscles are here, circular muscles. So peristalsis occurs through all the regions of the gut. That is not only the esophagus. It takes place throughout the digestive system. Okay, now mucus secreted by all the regions of the gut is slimy fluid which lubricates the food. Lubricates the food means makes the food slippery so that it can easily go down into the, through the gut or the alimentary canal. Okay, now next, after the food passes through the esophagus, it reaches the stomach. What is the stomach? It is an elastic bag. Whether you find it, it is just below the diaphragm. Now in an adult average, it can hold 2 to 3 liters of food, and its walls are very muscular, and it churns the food. That is, the muscles are always moving so that the food is churned, it is mixed thoroughly. Okay, why? With what is it mixed? It is mixed with the gastric juice secreted by the inner lining of the stomach. So which juice is secreted in the stomach? The gastric juice. The opening of the stomach into the intestine. So once the esophagus reaches the stomach, okay, there is another opening which passes it on to the intestine. So this opening of the stomach into the intestine, this opening is known as pylorus. Okay, it has a ring of muscles. The muscles are known as spinster muscle to keep the opening closed like a valve to prevent the food passing from the stomach until. So once the food reaches the stomach, it will remain in the stomach for 2 to 3 hours. So by that, until then, no food will pass down into the intestine. Why? Because the spinster muscles are closed. So it also prevents regurgitation from the duodenum. The duodenum is the first part of the small intestine. Okay, once food passes into the small intestine, there is no regurgitation, means it does not go back into the stomach. So a similar spinster muscle termed cardiac spinster is present at the front end of the stomach to prevent backflow of food into the esophagus. So there is another spinster muscle which is known as cardiac spinster. You find the cardiac spinster here in this region, so that food does not go back into the esophagus. You know when does it go back? When you vomit out the food. Sometimes when the stomach is overloaded, if you eat too much, or when it is disturbed. Okay, vomiting occurs, in which the cardiac spinster opens and there is reverse wave of peristalsis, which is known as anti-peristalsis, in the upward direction, and then you throw the contents out through the mouth. As you know, children, gastric juice is secreted in the stomach, and it is secreted by the inner lining of the stomach. The gastric juice is colorless, highly acidic, and it contains water, some salts. And why is it acidic? Because it has hydrochloric acid and also an enzyme called pepsin. The hydrochloric acid has two functions. One is to kill any germs which may have entered along with the food, and another function is to activate the enzyme pepsin to act on proteins. Okay, in the beginning, the pepsin is secreted as pepsinogen. Then the pepsinogen is changed into pepsin by hydrochloric acid. Okay, and the function of pepsin is to digest proteins. About only 20% of the proteins are digested in the stomach. Okay, and the end product is peptides. Now pepsinogen is inactive. It is turned into active pepsin by hydrochloric acid. And what is the function of pepsin? It digests protein and turns it into peptides. And another enzyme that you find in the stomach is renin. Okay, in the beginning it is inactive and it is known as prorenin. The hydrochloric acid will turn it into active renin. Okay, and what is the function of the enzyme renin? It turns casein, which is the protein found in milk, it turns it into para-casein. Okay, so remember, casein is soluble, whereas para-casein is a peptide and it is insoluble. Now the food stays in the stomach for about 3 hours and then it becomes pulpy. It turns into a pulp-like form and it is known as chyme. Now after that, the pylorus, remember the opening between the stomach and the small intestine, it opens intermittently, that is at regular intervals, very slowly, and it allows the chyme to move into the intestines little by little. So from the stomach, now the food will move into the small intestine. The small intestine is a tube of about 7 meters long and 2.5 centimeter wide. It is coiled and folded in the abdomen. It has 3 regions. The first region is known as the duodenum. It is the short upper part immediately next to the stomach. Okay, duodenum means actually 12. Okay, that is, if you place 12 fingers with, it is that long. And here you find the common bile duct, one coming from the liver and one coming from the pancreas, because the bile comes from the liver and the pancreatic juice comes from the pancreas, which helps in digestion. So it is in the duodenum this common bile duct opens. Okay, immediately after the duodenum you have a part which is known as jejunum. Okay, it is about 2 meters long. Jejunum means empty because has been seen in postmortems of dead people that this part always remains empty after death. Okay, the next part is the ilium. It is about 4 meters. Okay, ilium actually means twisting, rolling. It is this part which twists and turns and remains coiled in the stomach or the abdomen. The inner lining of the ilium is made up of great number of tiny finger-like projections. Okay, so up finger-like projections goes up and down. And remember, anything which forms a projection like this is actually to increase the surface area. Okay, so this tiny finger-like projections are known as villi. One is a villus. Now the villi, as I already told you, it increases the surface area of the intestines into nearly 8 times of that of the outer surface. So supposing if the outer surface is say for example, let us take ilium is 4 meters long. Now supposing if the 4 meters have the villi, it will be into 8 times. That is 4 into 8 is equal to 32 meters. So that is how it increases in surface area. Of course, why is it increasing? So that there is lots of absorption of the digested food. Now in between the villi here, you'll see in between there are small holes, tiny holes are there. Okay, from these holes, what comes into the small intestine? Intestinal juice, and it is secreted by the glandular cells that is poured into the lumen of the intestine. Lumen means the portion where the food is moving, the space inside the small intestine where the food is moving. Now each villus is covered by a single cell epithelium, and then we have blood capillaries, lacteal, we have vein, okay, which goes towards the hepatic portal vein. Hepatic means liver, okay, and then we have an artery and then lymphatic ducts. So basically, what is the villus made up of? It is covered by a single thick epithelium. Inside the villus, you have an artery, a vein, and interconnecting blood capillaries, and then a lymph vessel, which is the lacteal right at the center. Now the small intestine, what happens in the small intestine? Digestion also takes place, absorption of food also takes place, and as I have already told you when I was explaining the duodenum, it receives 2 digestive juices. One is the bile and the other is the pancreatic juice in the duodenum, and also its own walls secrete the intestinal juice in the ileum. So there are 3 digestive juices in the small intestine: bile, pancreatic juice, and intestinal juice. The food is digested in the small intestine, especially in the ileum, and the ileum is adapted for absorption of digested food. First, it is very long. You know, it is 4 meters long, and therefore there is more surface area provided. And apart from that, the inner part of the ileum has a large number of villi, which further increases the surface area for absorption, and you already know that it is about into 8 times. Okay, and it has a single celled epithelium, so that absorption becomes easier, and the ileum is narrow. So what happens when the food reaches this narrow ileum? It slows the movement of the food, thereby allowing absorption. So this is all, children, for today. Your assignment for this week is to write down how swallowing takes place, and from there the journey of food through the esophagus, stomach, and until it is digested in the small intestine, and write down about each and every enzyme that it comes across. Okay, so as usual, you'll be submitting your work on Wednesday, that is 5th of August. Till then, children, stay safe. God bless you.